Precisa ferir a pressão, medir a glicemia ou tomar uma vacina? Na Drogasil tem exames, testes e calendário vacinal completo. E o que é melhor, tem sempre uma Drogasil aí perto de você. É fácil, prático e rápido. Dá para ir entre uma música e outra. Procure nossos farmacêuticos. Quanto mais você conhece o que a gente faz na Drogasil, mais você se cuida.
What do you think about the Laker team now?
You follow the box scores of the games every day? Just the Lakers.
You're kidding. That is really a compliment. I was pleased to see you smile at the top of our show because once the game starts, you have a game face. You don't smile much out there.
I don't think you have to do things for money anymore.
Correct.
What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius. So, D, there's a belief that I have that every season the Lakers should be working toward their next NBA title. And that's not always able to be accomplished that particular year, right? Think of the young core years. We didn't enter those seasons going, Lakers are going to win it all this year, right? But going into a season like that with a young team, it's like part of building toward the next title is the young guys getting better, the whole overall structure being organized, us playing good basketball, kind of building something similar to like what OKC has done, right? They were a bad team a couple of years ago, and I remember they had a season where they could have tanked kind of toward the end to get into the lottery rather than the play-in, and actually went for it. And I would argue that they benefited as a team from just competitive experiences. And so that's an example of a season that you don't think has any chance of ending up in a title, but can help build toward a bigger goal, even if those players eventually get traded. Now, that's why I'm very curious about this season from a Lakers perspective. We have two guys kicking ass on Team USA in LeBron and AD. There's also been two trade deadline or trade seasons, right, where no move has been made when it's been apparent that they should. I've spent a lot of the time arguing that this isn't the right time to do it, that the right time to make a move is at the deadline. But I don't know if they're going to do that. And so I kick that idea to you, D, is there is a long-term and short-term goals of which they don't always align. And so I'm curious, I'm very much in you've got LeBron and AD on your team. You have to go for it if you're in the position to do so. I understand waiting and not doing it now or anything like that. But if the team's in that spot come the deadline, I think they've got to make a move. And so to me, this deadline is sort of the moment of truth from a roster standpoint.
So I agree. I also think that the team needs to continue to be aggressive this offseason. I understand waiting until the deadline because market situations may dictate that. And I wrote about market conditions basically in a piece I did for Silver Screen and Roll last week, right? Which I wrote about the ongoing need for patience just based off of this seemingly view of what the Lakers are, like their level of desperation to make a move and how that influences negotiations with other teams. I think that as long as LeBron continues, because AD's a given to me, so I want to frame this correctly, as long as LeBron continues to keep the window propped open, because the window closes once LeBron's ability to be like a great player stops. With this iteration of the roster, if they had traded something to get another great player, then that calculus changes. But right now, LeBron and AD are the team's best players. AD is awesome. He is right in the middle of his prime. LeBron continues to extend the end of his prime, the tail of his prime, for longer than any player ever, basically. And for him to be a third-team All-NBA player in this 21st season is just proof positive of that concept. I think they need to continue to be aggressive, Pete. I think they need to continue to go for it within the context of what going for it means. I think what going for it means is the exact nature of what this conversation is right now. And so I kick that back to you. It's like the whole Lakers need to make a trade. It's like, it's never that simple. I think that in an ideal world, the Lakers roster would look like one of those Photoshops that we've seen online, right? Which is like star X, Y, Z, Q, R, and S all in Lakers jerseys teaming up like the Avengers. But we understand that that's not real life. And so there is a strategic path to building out the best team possible with the assets that the Lakers currently have. And I think mapping that out is never as simple as fans want it to be or maybe even expect it to be.
I view the first round draft picks as kind of the currency in this discussion of long-term versus short-term, because the obvious benefit of the first round picks short-term is that you can ideally get a good player. Now, exactly where that line is, it's like, do I want to trade a first for Cam Johnson? Like, he's a solid player, but he makes $23 million, right? I haven't heard any player, but you and Mike both know my feelings on this are very passionate of like, hell yes, trade that pick. Like, go get a dude. That guy, that pick could be the 20th pick in the draft down the line. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if that's going to be a good player. It could be, sure. And there's a reason there are protections, and doing that wisely, I think, is important. For example, I think the top 4 protection on the Russ trade where we got D'Lo, Vando, and Beasley is important, because if we are in a position that you're, 27, where we're a bad team, there's a life after LeBron team coming up for sure in the next couple of years, where the Lakers have a decent chance of being one of the really bad teams in the NBA. But if you got a top 4 protection, then, if there's a star, you're probably still in the loop for that. And so that to me is sort of the core of this conversation is, who would you trade a first for? Who would you trade 2 firsts for, which currently are what the Lakers are at? The other thing too that never gets brought up is Austin as a trade piece, right? Now, I know there's a reflexive, Austin is a good player on one of the best contracts in the league. Absolutely. That could also be an argument for why you could probably get better players if you include Austin Reaves in a trade package or not. And so it's an interesting it's an interesting thought on like, how much do the Lakers value their own wins? Austin Reaves was an organizational win, right? But should he be untouchable in trades? I don't want to trade Austin. Don't get me wrong, dude. But it's interesting how he's never like brought up in this conversation.
It is, but I understand why he's not. And it's because it's very difficult to get a player as good as Austin Reaves on the contract that he's on when he's not a rookie. So Austin's going to make about as much as Victor Wembanyama this year. Over the life of his contract, Victor Wembanyama is going to make about 15, 20 times as much as Austin Reaves will over the life of his NBA career, right? And so I'm not comparing the two, and I'm not comparing what their impact will be on the court next season. And Victor is very likely to make an All-NBA team, and Austin's not. That's just the way of the world. My point is, though, is that if you're paying Austin Reaves $12 million to be very good to high-level starting player, that you are banking value there that is very difficult to make up in other ways. And so I don't view Austin Reaves untouchable based off the fact that he's an organizational win or the fact that he's so talented that he can't be traded like he's going to be an all-NBA level player. I value him as untouchable because the value to his contract is, like, we talk about upside down mortgages. This is the opposite. Right. This is the house that you bought at $150K and now suddenly 3 years later it's worth $7 million and you're just like, oh yeah, well, just trade it. Just sell it now. When it's just like, that's really not how it works. Again, I know I just used the word untouchable, and would I trade Austin? I would, for the right piece. That piece is going to need to be such an excellent piece that it's like he might as well be on the shelf the way that vintage bottle of wine, like, oh, I'm saving it for the right occasion. It's just like that right occasion might be your 50th wedding anniversary and you've been married 22 years, right? It's just like there's this whole idea of I'll get there eventually, but will you actually?
But that's the thing, though. There's an alternative pressure here in that LeBron ain't getting any younger. He's still amazing. AD is on the other side of 30, right? There's an immediacy to this team. And that is a pressure against that.
There is. It's just, though, I see Austin as a solution in that as a player who's going to help that team win, not as the player who's going to be the avenue to get you the player who's going to help you win. And he's on the other side of that line. I think that there are players who I really like on this team who are on the other side of that line. So this is a tricky thing, though, because I want to get back to the idea of the picks to me. And we should probably even spell out the pick assets that the Lakers do have, right? Because I think that's then going to lead us into the next part of this conversation about how much you should or should not value those things. So let's go to break here. So Pete, the next 4 to 5 years of Lakers draft stuff is already well established. The Pelicans deferred the right to take the last first round pick that is owed to them from the Anthony Davis trade. They deferred that from the 2024 draft, which the Lakers just used to draft Dalton Connect, and they pushed it to 2025. So the Lakers no longer have a 2025 first round pick, their own. It's going to New Orleans. Because of the Stepien rule, the Lakers do have their own 2026 pick, but it is not tradable. The 2027 pick, the Lakers have traded, but it's protected 1 through 4. And so if it were to fall outside of the top 4 picks, it goes to the Utah Jazz. If it falls within the top 4 picks, the Lakers keep their pick. It's my understanding that that pick will immediately convey. So the Lakers either give up a first round pick or it turns into second round picks that they then give the Jazz. That was very important because based off of the timing of the trade, there were rules around how far out that you could trade a pick. And so the Lakers needed to work it that way. Every pick after the 2027 pick, the Lakers own. So they own their 2028 pick, their 2029 pick, their 2030 pick, and their 2031 pick. And there's a 7-year rule in which you cannot trade picks farther than 7 years out. And so that's the next 7 years of the Lakers draft. One of the reasons why the Lakers are consistently talked about as having 2 tradable first round picks now, it's because of the Stepien rule. So the Lakers can trade their 2029 pick and their 2031 pick because you cannot trade first round picks in back-to-back drafts. The Lakers can also trade swaps for all the in-between years in order and swap out all of those picks. And so that is the pick landscape, Pete. I send it back to you with the idea of you've always been, just like you explained earlier, a guy that is willing to, quote unquote, mortgage those future picks for present return in order to make your team as viable as possible if they are at a certain baseline of we can compete for a championship. And this version of AD and this version of LeBron, I think you would argue, push you above that threshold to look into dealing those picks, right?
Absolutely. And tomorrow isn't guaranteed, right? I think that if you operate under the presumption that someone's going to come here, historically speaking, the Lakers have to be like a 35-win team or above in order to attract the big free agents, or else those big free agents aren't necessarily that interested. That's a fairly low bar, right? Lakers have a lot of things going for them between the history of the team, the location, and just like the legacy that the team has built, an organization have built. And these are part of the fruits of that. You only got to be like a 35-ish win team for a great player to be like, hell yeah, I can come there. We'll be a lot better. We'll start to contend, add another guy. That's basically what LeBron did, was join a 35-win Laker team. And so I think that's also part of the gear toward player development this summer. Also the more restrictive nature of the CBA. And that's why there's more and more of you got to fix this internally. I think the pressure that's put on that. And so with respect to the picks, like, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. We have LeBron and AD who are great now. They are also a very unusual duo to build around in 2024-25 in terms of what they bring on the offensive end. And that to me is part of the fun of basketball and talking about the team, is that like I absolutely think you can build a title team around them. I just think that the way you do it is a little bit different than it's ever been before. Remember, LeBron was the point guard in 2020. And so he's in a very different role that kind of moves between worlds, as we've talked about a lot recently. And so to me, it's a matter of figuring out, like, it comes down to this. I think the Lakers need to either trade for one guy, like one real difference maker. And they have a bunch of different versions of trade packages that they could use to get there between picks and solid players in their 20s and all of that. But if that lands for example, I totally agree with you on Austin. Donovan Mitchell was the one guy where it was like, yeah, I'd trade Austin for Donovan Mitchell, right? But for like Trae Young, I wouldn't do that because even though I think Trae Young's a better player than Austin, just the difference between salaries, he's what, like 43 million, Austin at 12. I think you can get more basketball player out of Austin plus 36 million than you can out of, Austin plus like 30 million or so than you can out of Trae. And so that to me is, you either need to make that one big deal or two smaller deals where you get two good solid role players. So that's the formula, one guy or two really good players. And so how they go about that, and if they do, is one of the big intrigues of this year, because I'm not certain that they're not of the mind where it's like, you guys really got to show me by the trade deadline for us to want to do anything. Otherwise, we're going to hoard our picks and do that. And then I'll be upset if that's the route they take.
I'll be disappointed for sure, because I think that rather than be the prove me team, and this is one of the things that I reflexively push back against, LeBron and Anthony Davis as a duo have proven they can win a championship. And right now in the summer, they're proving again that when you surround them with good talent, and Team USA is not good talent, it's the best talent you're going to find collectively in the entire world. So don't get me wrong, but surround them with the requisite pieces and they're going to look amazing. That's it. End of story. And so this whole idea of, well, you got to show me, it's just like, no. There's this meme, right, where there's this guy in the mirror who's like angrily.
Like it's all about you. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all about you, but really he's pointing in the mirror and it's back at himself. I would argue that the front office is that dude in the mirror. It's not like you got to show me and he's pointing at LeBron and AD and like the team. The front office needs to say, we need to make sure that we're navigating this correctly on our side to give these dudes the players that they need in order to win, because they have proven that they can do it. And to be fair to this front office, they have proven that they can do it.
That's right.
It's not like a different front office built the team
Same
that
crew.
won the championship. It was Rob Pelinka and all of these guys who are there currently, which I think is part of the reason why there's been some frustration around like the different paths that the team has taken in order to try to build out a winner. Like the first year that Rob ran the team after Magic went, they hired Frank Vogel, they traded for Anthony Davis, and then they built out the team through free agency that won the title. And ever since then, it went from small tweaks to like a massive change. And I think that this iteration of the team is closer to the first version that won the championship.
Agreed.
It's just that the role players are not as good defensively. They're not as good two-way basketball players. Like, so that idea of how can we rebalance the team, I think that that's the job of the front office right now. The bridge that this front office needs to look for is how can we potentially account for any slippage that we've seen from 2020 to now in terms of like ball handling and shot creation outside of LeBron and AD, but really examining the best way to get the types of two-way players that we know thrive next to LeBron and AD, but also can support and uplift LeBron and AD from their side. So like, I look at a player like D'Angelo Russell, for example. He is, to me, a very good offensive fit next to LeBron and AD, and he checks a lot of boxes in terms of being that sort of bridge player, but he's just not nearly as good defensively as what you got from like a Danny Green or a KCP or an Alex Caruso. And I think even a player like Kuz, who was a good offensive player in his own right, just had a more varied and higher defensive floor than maybe someone like Rui. They might be comparable talents or whatever, but finding those two-way players that can help LeBron and AD in the ways that they need to be helped for this to be a title-winning team, I think that's the direction the front office needs to go in, and that's where they should be examining using these picks. And that's the going for it that I think that ultimately might be that middle ground between the version that they are now and the like, oh, go get another top level player, because those players are hard to get in, and 2 first round picks may not even be enough to get that player in anyway.
Very much so. And that's part of the reason why I think if what I said earlier was true of the one big move versus 2 smaller moves or one trade that gets you two good role players. I think you have more options in the latter category, and you have more options to get those sort of two-way guys also with the talent that the Lakers already have in terms of players, right? And so I'm curious what direction they go in that respect, because the timeline of what I think what I think the timeline is on this is Lakers win the title in 2020 with LeBron at point guard. So KCP and Danny Green and even Avery Bradley has a little more of this, but very little in the way of ball handling or shot creation on their own. Excellent role players. It's just not what they bring to the table. That's a team where it's like, we're going to entirely give the ball to LeBron, basically, or AD, or we're going to entirely give the ball to Rondo. But it's a very ball dominant. Two guys are going to mostly have the ball. Everybody else does a job. Then I think the conditions of the bubble and the turnaround from one season to the other, and then sort of how 2021 went also with the injuries, I think there's a certain degree of like, LeBron can't do it as a point guard anymore. He can still do it, right? But the whole idea of like, just give LeBron the basketball, which was LeBron for, I don't know, 16 years or however long it was, that was transitioning. And so I think what we saw was enter like Danny Green for Dennis Schroeder. That to me is a pivotal trade in the history of the last 4 or 5 years of the Lakers, in terms of what the Lakers were going for, right? So it's this, hey, we're still going to maintain some defensive ability, but now we've got a guy who can create a shot on his own. And so I think the Lakers are still like, they overcorrected in one direction and are trying to get back. And so is that accomplished through the role players versus the on-ball type of guy? Because if we go the role player route, the more there's that route, the more shot creation on-ball burden there is on LeBron. Let's take a break here and come back and keep it going.
How much to you, Pete, is that mitigated by scheme offensively?
A lot. This is why I've been howling for the triple threat, 5 out, world swirls around, your stars, make your system like now. And I think that's what we're finally transitioning to. The last season was sort of this weird in-between year where we were sort of an on-ball pick and roll team, but also a 5 out team. I think this year with what Reddick's talked about, right, we'll see, but really addresses some of that. So to me, that's the path. That's why I've been screaming for it for 2 years.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the next step up for both Austin and D'Lo as being able to operate in a pure 5 out offense. Both of them have been like real ball screen heavy guards for a lot of their careers. D'Lo showed more flexibility last season, I think, than even his first run in Golden State, where he was like doing more off-ball screening, more off-ball cutting, working in the gaps of the defense and really understanding what his role should be in a 5 out style. I think Austin got better at that as the year progressed, but he was still best operating in ball screens. And I don't think the modern NBA is ever fully going to go away from ball screens. It's just such a difficult action to defend with the rules today and the spacing principles that are in place. But I'm more of the mind that elite on-ball creator who can also be like a very good defensive player, those players cost so much money, and and if the only way you're going to be able to acquire that guy is via trade, then you have to give up so many of your good players in order to get that single player that it's like, well, what are we actually doing here? So like a pipe dream world is like, oh, the Lakers trade for Steph Curry. Steph Curry makes $50 million.
Sure.
Right?
And Golden State would never trade him. So,
no, sure. But yeah. I'm just saying, let's say that Rob Pelinka went up to Joe Lacob and gave him the offer that he couldn't refuse. It's like even getting the salary to work, where the Lakers have to give up more money than they take back because they're a first apron team, and then having that deal even work with the Warriors because it's so tricky, right? So how do you even do it? And you basically can't without giving up every single good role player you have. It would need to be like a 4 or 5 for 1 trade. basically. And so making trades are harder. And this is why the avenue of a role player or two, or players who make in between $15 and $25 million seem much more attainable based off of the salaries that the Lakers have to trade. The question is, are you actually getting players back who are better than the players that you're sending out?
I don't think you get more shot creation for that salary range than you have in D'Lo. Right. So if that's the attribute that you're looking for, I think you need to combine D'Lo with another salary to get a higher tier guy at that. Right. And then you run into the complications that you just laid out there. And so it depends on now, do I think you can get a better player at that salary range? I do. But it gets back to that fundamental question of how much of a ball handler is LeBron? How much of a ball handler is AD in the new offense?
Yeah, or even how much of a ball handler is Austin Reaves, if that's the guy that you're keeping. This is where JHS and the complete unknown that he is sort of matters here, right? He was the guy that the Lakers drafted as a guard. Mm-hmm. Who knows what they projected him to be by year 2, but the hope is that he's an on-ball player who can supplement some ball handling. And right now he's a complete unknown. And I think both you and I would honestly say that he's nowhere close to being that sort of player.
That's why I don't think he's a complete unknown. I saw enough to be like, that guy's not going to be doing anything for us this year. And he's coming off back surgery too. So it's not like he's working out and getting better, but no, he's just not a good enough basketball player at this point and hopefully he gets there. But he's a 2 years away from being 2 years away guy to me.
And the young players that the Lakers do have that they like, they love Max Christie. They just gave him $8 million a season. I'm assuming they love Dalton Connect. They just drafted him and are very happy, and he played well in Summer League. It's not like there's another guard in the pipeline, right? And so you either need to functionally replace D'Lo in any trade that sends out D'Lo, or you need to see this not massive, but Austin Reaves needs to do more in that regard. Or you're falling right back into the idea of, well, LeBron, you're our guy.
That's the thing, is that I feel like if we keep trying to rely on individual shot creation, we're always going to hit a ceiling. And that's exactly why I think that if there is a path, right, this might not get us there either. It's more out of the triple threat position. And then when LeBron wants to be, because he can still do that. He, has done that in Team USA. There are certain matchups and certain situations where he'll absolutely be the guy he's always been as that lead guard, but to not demand that of him on every possession through 82, but also in the playoffs. And so that to me is key to where this goes.
Can you lay out to me the idea of a pathway towards this is how the team would go for it using the assets that they have at their disposal?
So it starts now with just being very organized, where Redick comes in and puts a lot of structure in place while LeBron and AD are off kicking ass overseas. So there establishes just a level of we work every day and, progress toward a goal, seriousness in the culture. The team gets to the trade deadline as a well-organized team that runs its sets well, runs more triple threat. Don't abandon the ball screens, right? That's something that was very good for the Lakers. I'm just saying that it has a ceiling and it can't be I feel like every individual shot creator the Lakers have is imperfect in their own way. But there are ways to be good while that's the case, because they have several very good offensive players. So this is an interesting, or this is a way of putting it, I suppose, is that like they have a lot of guys who are good, but they don't anymore have an every possession, Luka level type of guy. And LeBron, as great as he is doing it off the ball. He's doing it in the post. He's doing it as a ball screen guy, but it's a more varied type of situation where it's harder for him to break down Aaron Gordon off the dribble at this point of his career, right? It just is what it is. And so it's getting to the deadline and trying to get probably the two best role players, I think, unless there's a shot creator that's that higher level guy where you're like D'Lo and one other fairly significant salary, and we look at each other and be like, yeah, we trade that for that guy. Or if it's a super high level guy and it's Austin, right? I think that has to be on the table too. But I think the likelihood of that happening is much lower than getting a good role player or two that can contribute on both ends of the floor and giving the Lakers kind of an overall LeBron and AD and then a tool for every job on the rest of the roster. That to me is kind of the successful go for it, is like, what are you at the deadline? And then what do you need? Somebody could be hurt, right? We're talking about a team on paper right now where the reality at the deadline might be player X is hurt, leaving this hole for us, and we need to fill it, right? It could change the calculus, but what I'm saying is getting just another role player or two that does something different enough than our current guys to be able to fill in the gaps.
And is your preference to wait until the deadline to do that, or are you trying to do that before the season starts?
I would prefer to do as much of that as early as possible. That said, I do think a small benefit is the continuity, right? We talked about this all last season. And then the way it actually played out was different players in lineups running a different system, which was the right choice, I think. But it was still a change in offense. There was no continuity at all, really, last season, or very little. And so I think that's a great benefit to Redick as a new coach, as a first-time coach, to come in with the same group of dudes who generally know how to play with each other. And for much of last season, were really yearning to play with each other in the groups that they had success with, right? There's this sort of angst to going into this season that we didn't have last year that is actually very healthy and good, I think, to kind of get you to where you want to go. And so that is the first part of this, right? Is sort of building that continuity, and then Redick being able to take that, I think, through system to a different level.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm looking at this from a different perspective, even though I think like a parallel perspective, not different.
Yeah.
Like necessarily. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of like, what are the assets that I would prefer to trade in order to upgrade the team? Right. And so we've talked about the first round picks a fair amount. I'm trying to look at players 10 through 13 on the roster, or 9 through 13 on the roster, and at least one medium-sized salary, and figure out what can I do to upgrade the team in tangible ways by using these specific pieces. And then if I need to go into the top 8 players in order to trade something, it's because the thing I'm getting back is a better fit for what I'm trying to do as a championship team, right? And so in more specific terms, I would look at a player who makes in between $10 and $18 million, which is basically the entire middle part of the roster. And I would look at a first round pick, and I would say, what can $11 million and a first round pick, and then one of the minimums, or JHS, who makes almost $4 million. What can that get me in terms of an upgrade for my roster that fills a very specific need right now? Maybe that's a backup big. Maybe that's a better two-way wing, right? And then I would look at one of the higher end salaries, the D'Lo salary, the Rui salary potentially, and say, can I use that and maybe the other first round pick in order to really get me the more solidifying piece that says this is the exact sort of dude that I need in order to get me the team that I'm looking for. And the core of the team is still LeBron, AD, Austin, and then whatever of the 3 role players that you've got left over that you did not trade, and then connect, and then Max, because I'm assuming neither of those guys are traded in these scenarios. And you've suddenly got, here's our 10, right? And maybe that cost you Gabe, or maybe that cost you Vando, or maybe that cost you Rui, or maybe that cost you D'Lo, but it's not going to cost you all 4 of those dudes. Odds are you're going to have at least 2 of those dudes, and then what you get back to add to LeBron, Austin, and AD. And that's sort of the pathway to me of being, this is the team that we've now built that we think can win a championship. That's sort of a narrow path to me, but that to me is going to give them the best chance.
It also could cost you Connect or Max, right? Those are the kids on this rotation. I've seen Gabe Vincent be good on a playoff. He had a cursed season last year, and maybe he won't be good for us this year. But I've seen him get to the playoffs, or I've seen him produce in the playoffs in big games. I haven't seen that from a rookie in Connect or Max Christie, and they're on good contracts that other teams are going to covet. So that's going to be a storyline too. Is like, do other teams covet them?
It definitely is. The thing, and this is probably a discussion for another pod, and we'll get into this soon, but if you're talking about mortgaging the future in terms of picks, I would like to keep the young players I like, which is one of the reasons why I value Austin, and which is one of the reasons why I might value Connect and Max above a player like Gabe, even if the proven factor, it does sway in Gabe's direction.
I'm saying if you're trying to be a good team or a playoff team this year or next year, the likelihood that Gabe is better than one or both of them is decently high, right? They're kids. They haven't done it yet. Now, could they surpass him? Absolutely. I'm just saying that if you have this pressure of having LeBron and AD now and tomorrow is not proven, I'm just saying it's got to be on the table if you actually really want to go for it. And so that we're not going to get the answer to that until February, but that's the core, I think, question about the season is, will the Lakers go for it? Join me on Sunday on Playback. I'm going to be calling the game USA against South Sudan. They played an incredible basketball game last time they played. I think that's like 8 a.m. Pacific time. So I'll be calling that on Playback. That'll be a lot of fun. If you want to support the work that I do, you could buy me a coffee or on Patreon. We'll catch you next week. But until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double team. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires. It's good. They will. Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds. Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move. 2, 1.
Miss it.
Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over. Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And then with a little tap to Alvin Gentry.
Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.